From Boca Raton, Florida, Rabbis Ephraim Goldberg, Philip Moskowitz, and Josh Brody are taking you behind the Bima. The BRS rabbis schmooze about contemporary issues and talk to special guests who give a behind-the-scenes look at how they got to where they are and what keeps them going. Welcome to Behind the Bima.
Good evening, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. I'm Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, joined again, Baruch Hashem, thank God, by my dear colleague and friend, Rabbi Joshua Brody, and we are here to take you
behind the Bima.
Behind the Bima. Tonight, we're so excited to go behind the Bima. Simultaneously, we've entered a period of sadness. As the 3 weeks begin, we'll talk more about that in the context of where Rabbi Brody is right now. But first, a big thank you to our sponsors, Marty and Sarah Shandelson, in memory of Chaya Hinda Bazdov, and in memory of Esti Moskowitz, Allah Shalom. Marty, and Sarah are incredible pillars of our community who do so much, have done so much, and including making the connection for tonight's amazing guest, hero of the Jewish people, the one, the only, the great Natan Sharansky. Really excited for this conversation. But first, I'm also really excited to have a conversation with you, Rabbi Brody, to be back together. So talk to us. What's going on? Where are you?
I'm in Israel right now. Our daughter
in Israel, staying up late.
Staying up late. It's very late right now, but we're on call because, Mirza Hashem might be a baby, first grandchild being born any minute. And it's very exciting because it's the first grandchild. It's the first grandchild on both sides. Yeah, our Mechutin has grandchildren, but this will be the first one born in Israel. So Sabra. I know you have a daughter.
Yeah,
right?
It's meaningful. It's meaningful for you to, first of all, reach that milestone, and we bless all those who want to get there to be there and to celebrate Simchas. That's meaningful, and it's meaningful to have that continuity in the land of Israel. Wow, how meaningful is that?
It's very special, and we were just here for another Simcha. Simone's sister had a Simcha last week. We're in Beit Shemesh. And someone, as we were walking to shul on Erev Shabbos, runs over and says, "Oh my gosh, is that Rabbi Brody from behind the Bima?" I said, as a matter of fact, it is. I mean, you want autographs? I mean, I don't have any pens on me right now. I said, you listen, you're a fan. I said, I appreciate you. I don't usually get it. I tell Simone, she's up the block already. So she says, no, I just listen, and I heard you say many times that no one ever comes over to you and asks for autographs. So I came over to you.
Nice, good for her. Call it to that person. So tell us something special about this trip. What have you done there? What should we know as we are entering this? We're in this period of the 3 weeks, and we're grieving, we're mourning, and desperately yearning to have the Beis HaMikdash be rebuilt, to be united, to have peace for the Jews around the world. We're still mourning the loss of this soldier killed in Jenin, fighting, defending the Jewish people, and our broken hearts for all those who are sad. So give us some uplifting message. What's going on? What's the good word?
So first of all, yesterday we were in Yerushalayim. We got a chance to go to the back to the Kotel, and it's actually nice when you go with your children. And finally old enough to ask the questions like, what is the Kotel? Like the Kotel, is it the last wall? Wait, I thought it was all destroyed. So it's nice that they're getting a little older and you can finally have those conversations. But tonight I actually came from an event where I got an invitation from our dear friend JJ Sussman, who works for Gesher. And you should know there is a lot of great work being done in Israel right now, trying to bridge this divide that is growing, unfortunately, a little bit further. And to hear people get up and give testimonials of how they've been impacted, to see the other side of the story. You talk about the Sinas Chinam, you talk about everything that was driving the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. There are great programs and there are great opportunities right now for people to try and bring it together. So
that is optimistic and that is hopeful, and it's desperately needed. We need to communicate and collaborate, and we need to connect with one another, not only focus on differences, but see what we have in common. I wrote an article last week about the Jewish nod. I've been doing some traveling recently too, way too much of it, especially the way travel has been going these days. And you know that feeling. You could be anywhere on the planet Earth. You're walking in that airport and there's a Jew walking towards you. You see each other from a distance, and then maybe you lock eyes and you give them just the Jewish nod. That's all you have to do, smile. You could even not exchange words, and you leave your most expensive prized possessions with someone while you go into the bathroom or go buy a drink. Because the Jewish people are a family at our core. And in that moment, when you do that Jewish nod, right, you're in the middle of a national park, you're, God forbid, in a hospital somewhere, you're at an airport in the middle of nowhere, and you see that other Jew, you're not like, well, you wear that yarmulke, I can't do the nod. Or your kids go to that school, I can't do the nod. Or you worship or believe in that way, so I can't do the nod. you don't focus on the differences in that moment. All you see are the similarities because you're just so excited to see a member of your extended family. And you do
And
that.
it's usually two guys wearing a polo shirt and a baseball hat.
Exactly. Both of which
One's
are desperately
Hasidish,
trying.
one's modern, one's yeshivish. It's okay. We're all got the same
Both
polo
desperately trying to not look Jewish, but we can call ourselves out a mile away.
shirt.
And we do that Jewish nod, and we're just excited and happy to see each other in that moment. And all we see is the similarity. So why can't we do that when we're not in an airport or, God forbid, a hospital or a national park or somewhere obscure? Why can't we do that when we're just together, see what we have in common, not what divides us? When we do, you'll never, it's not like you see two Asians, two Christians, two Muslims, two African Americans. They don't walk by and just nod like,
Right.
Asian. You know, I don't do
Jews,
that.
we got it.
I don't know
know.
anyone else who does that. Just the knowing
Right.
nod. Or you're sitting on the plane, they're coming down that aisle, right? The nod as they come down the aisle. The eyes, the nod. My kids have a thing. They go, a Jew, a Jew. From afar, they go, a Jew, a Jew. That's their thing.
So I tell you something funny. You know, we were sitting outside. My kids were getting a falafel or shawarma, and I see two guys get out of a truck, two Israeli soldiers. So I don't know, people don't do this anymore. But I said, you know what? Eitan and Ahuva, I said, you guys are taking a picture with those two soldiers. So I called the two guys and I say, listen, my two kids, I say to them like Hebrew, I'm trying to speak Hebrew. I was like, I want to take tmuna, we're going to take a picture. And they didn't want to be, neither one of them wanted to be, no one wanted to be in this picture, the soldiers or my kids. I said, we're doing it. And they all smiled and they took a picture. Then a second later, some other guy, some Israeli walks over to me. He says, I am so happy you did that. So I felt so good. And he comes over and he starts talking about, there's not enough of that going on. Where's the love? Just say thank you. You appreciate what they're doing.
100%. You know, I was telling you, Rabbi Brody, before we came to talk tonight, that the program that you ran the night before Shavuos, where Jews came together of all kinds of backgrounds just to study Torah, to speak that common language. In fact, actually, I had a Zoom meeting yesterday with Rabbi Mintz of Chabad, of JLI, who I first met through you. We were meeting about a project we're going to be working on mental health.
Did you bring it up to him that this is still going on?
Yeah, there were a group of people who were on the call, and he says, oh, my chavrusa, because we learned together that night.
So
but anyway, the night before Shavuos, you put, what was it, 250 people in a room?
Yeah.
All backgrounds.
All
backgrounds, just to learn Torah. We're not judicial reform and abortion and gun control and resolving any conflict. There was just learn Torah. Just learn Torah. Fast forward, right? Shavuos was how long ago? Well, it's Shavas Rabbatama. So fast forward, and there are two members of our shul who told me this past weekend that the person they met that night, they're still learning with every week. And one of the people who came that night, who I don't think had ever been to an Orthodox shul, has been coming to us since, because their chavrusa, Trevor, keeps learning with them, met him that night, invited him, and now he comes to shul every weekend. It's unbelievable.
It's really amazing.
All you have to do is reach out. Yeah. All you have to do is extend yourself, give an invitation, say hello. That's all you have to do. I had another meeting yesterday, and I had two conversations from both sides complaining about the same thing, and everyone could fix it. What was it? So, the community shifted a little bit. The whole world is moving and shifting. It's not that the world's going to the right. It's that the center, the middle has moved. So you got the, the original group or say those who outwardly aren't as religiously intense in appearance, who say, the new right-wing fanatic, they walk by, they don't say good Shabbos. Holier than thou, they're so righteous, they don't say good Shabbos. Then you got some of the newer people who moved in, more Haimish and so on, and say, I see those who, dress differently in Shabbos, not a Shabbos deck, and they look at me, they won't even say good Shabbos. Yeah. So they're both complaining about the same thing, but the truth is, any of them could fix it, because all we have to all do is just say good Shabbos. Say hello and be kind and courteous and have derech eretz and be a mensch, whether the other person's religious, less religious, more religious, not Jewish. How hard is it to say hi and smile at everybody that you see?
Yeah, I should see also. I did something which, maybe I'll get some people are not going to like what I just did, but I went to Manny's. I had to buy some mezuzahs for Avigal for the apartment here. So I'm standing in line and everyone's cutting in front of me. I can't get to the register. It's my turn now. And now there's another person cutting in front. And then there's a lady yelling out from the other side, we needs help. And I said, listen, everybody, it's my turn. Everyone wait. And I said, and then the guy behind the counter is the English guy. He says, he's right. He was next. And then you could hear a pin drop. And it was awkward silence because now the guy had to go get the cloth. So now I'm waiting in line. They're all standing next to me.
I'm calling Manny's. I got to get the security footage of this moment.
There's a camera. There's footage. First of all, my kids couldn't believe it, but I was like, you know what? Come on, like let's.
I like that moment. Like what a smile. Like, yo, everyone.
Everybody.
The
Time
line,
out.
I'm next. Right. All with a smile, with love. I love everybody.
All the Israelis are going to be like, that's not, we're not trying to cut you off. It's like
survival.
We do it. It's okay. Whatever.
Survival of the fittest. Anyway, the point is these 3 weeks are a time and a period for healing. We've got enough anti-Semitism, people who hate us from the outside. That's what we're going to talk about with Natan Sharansky tonight. And by the way, we're very grateful to the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. Everyone should check out isgap.org. isgap.org. It's an important institute. Natan Sharansky is the chair of the board. We got enough enemies who hate us on the outside. We got to love each other more than ever. Yeah. 3 weeks. You ready? Starts tonight. 3 weeks, just love. Just hi, good Shabbos, how are you? Smile. Just love. I got another conversation I had today with somebody. We got an email on a group of people, a group of friends, and someone said, if you vote for so-and-so, you're a self-hating Jew. It's like, you can't have a legitimate difference of opinions on issues. And you got to resort to calling someone a name.
Right.
That's it. That's really self-hating. Really? And this person who was offended is the opposite of a self-hating Jew. They've done more for the Jewish people. Maybe they view things a little bit differently politically. Like we're our own worst enemies. Let's fix it. We could debate. See, I'm an outsider. You're on the ground there, but the whole judicial reform debate, we'll talk about it with Natan Sharansky too. But at least both sides, they love their country, have served the country, are waving the flags in honor of the country, and they're debating what's best for the country. Like you could have a difference of opinion on something, but it's because you both love your family so much, and you'll be a family when it's over, which is great. So anyway, that's our 3-week challenge to everyone. Just Avas Yisrael, just love. Get along, find someone different, invite, host, go out for coffee, connect, build a relationship, have a chavrusa, just say hello. Right. We have the privilege this evening to bring on Natan Sharansky. We give a little bit of background. If you're our age or older, you know Natan Sharansky. Not only do you know Natan Sharansky, you're in awe of Natan Sharansky. Maybe younger, maybe not as much. He was born in the Ukraine. He was a spokesperson of the human rights movement, a prisoner of Zion, leader in the struggle for Soviet Jewry. Subsequent to his request to make Aliyah, he was arrested on trumped-up charges of treason and espionage. He was convicted in a Soviet court. He served 9 years in the Gulag with stretches in a punishing cell. Like we can't imagine what that means, right? When we're caught with slow Wi-Fi or our flight's delayed 7 hours, as mine was last week, you're like, this is torture. This is impossible. I can't take it. 9 years in the Russian Gulag in a punishing cell, many of them, following massive public campaigns. And world Jewry. He was released in 1986, made Aliyah on the very day of his release. He established the Zionist Forum to serve Soviet Olim. 1990s, he established the Israel Ba'aliyah Party. He served in 4 successive Israeli governments. He was a minister and a deputy prime minister. 2018, he received the highest Israel award, the Israel Prize, for promoting Aliyah and ingathering of the exiles. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor, United States Congress in 1986, Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2006. Wow. He's the only living non-American citizen who's the recipient of the 2 highest American awards. It's unbelievable. Wow. 2009, 2018, he serves as the chairman of the executive of the Jewish Agency for Israel. He's written 4 books. They're all brilliant. He is brilliant. And it's really a great pleasure to welcome him behind the Bima, Natan Sharansky. It's truly a tremendous honor. It's a great zchus to be able to go behind the Bima with a world-famous hero of so much of the Jewish people, including me, Natan Sharansky. Thank you so much for joining us and for letting us go behind the Bima together.
Thank you, Rabbi, for inviting me. Yeah.
It's really, really an honor. Anybody who knows your history and the leadership role that you've played, not only in the many years since you were a refusnik, but in the growth of our beloved state of Israel, land of Israel, the Jewish people, it's a great honor to be with such a hero. And I want to start right there about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism for you is such a part of your history and your life. You were a victim of it for so many years. What are your concerns today when you see anti-Semitism rearing its ugly head again? It was across Europe for many years and now across the United States, particularly on university campuses. What are you seeing and what does it do for you even emotionally in reopening old wounds of your own history and feeling a sense of responsibility to confront it today?
Well, look, it's not that suddenly the old wounds were opened. I was really surprised, let's say, in like 15 years after it was released, to discover that this new and old anti-Semitism together are coming to the free world, because in Soviet Union, it was so simple and so clear that when there is another round of attacks on Zionist Israel, Jews should be concerned. If those Jews who have no idea what Zionism is, but the attack on Zionism always means also attacks on Jews, and vice versa. When there was another campaign against cosmopolites, that was another name for the Jews. It was clear that Israel is the target, and we felt that it's all part of the totalitarian regime. The totalitarian regime needs internal and external enemy to unite people under the leadership of dictator. And there is no better scapegoat, no better target as an external enemy and internal enemy simultaneously as Israel and Jews. So that is the part of this totalitarian world where we fought for our right to live as Jews, for our right to live, and for the freedom in general. So later, when I am already minister of Israeli government, and to discover, it was the time of the first conference against racism in Durban, when suddenly the only higher of apartheid, so South African apartheid, that we all were fighting against. The only apartheid state today is Israel, and the only post-colonial state is Israel, and the only target of the conference against racism is Israel. And suddenly the cartoons in the free world in Europe, the same cartoons we were in Nazi Germany or in Soviet Union, of these typical Jews or anti-Semites, and now they are as the leaders of Israeli state, the same cartoons. It was quite shocking. What was even more difficult to understand, how the world and how many Jews don't see that demonization of Israel is the same type of anti-Semitic campaign as demonization of Jews. And it took time for people to realize that we are speaking about new, but in fact old anti-Semitism. And
how would you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how would you explain that then, particularly to a young person? My family and I were on a vacation, and apparently there was a famous actress there, and I had heard about this actress. She supported BDS. So I said to my children, I described her to them as an anti-Semite. I said, Abba, she's not an anti-Semite. She's just against Israel. I said, don't you understand, to be against Israel unfairly and in a double standard way is a form of anti-Semitism? So how would you explain to particularly young people today?
There was really, first of all, it was all the strong campaign of the enemies of Israel. And then they, at some moment they got, it was in, like 25 years ago, when they understood that it will be much more powerful to use the popular ideas to fight Israel, not because we don't want to have Jewish state in the Middle East, but as the part of the campaign against colonialism, against racism, and what was unfortunate, that for many liberal Jews who were very much against racism and against apartheid, all the Jews were against apartheid and so on, and they felt somehow embarrassed to be associated with a country which is accused of the same thing. And I remember first time in the year 2001 or something, when I saw Canadian Jew who told me on the campus, young Canadian Jew, who told me that for me as a Jew, it will be better if Israel doesn't exist, because then I don't have to every day to explain that I am for human rights, that I am against colonialism, and so on. Then I really understood that our enemies are successful. And in order to stop this, the statements which I heard all the time, I was minister of Israel government who was fighting against anti-Semitism, and all the time I heard from some even very good liberal partners that don't confuse, don't call criticism of Israel anti-Semitism. And then I proposed the simple standard that to criticize Israel is okay as to criticize any other democratic country. In fact, Israel is full of self-criticism.
Right.
But let's see that what were the tools of anti-Semites? Demonization of Jew, double standards towards Jew, and the delegitimization of Jew. I call it 3D principle. Then when you see demonization of Israel, when Israel is compared to Nazi state or something like this, or when you see clear denial of the right of Israel to exist, delegitimization, or when you see that Israel is treated with a standard that no other country in the world, whether it is the most free democracy like America or the most totalitarian regime like Iran, nobody is treated by such criteria. These are that is the anti-Semitism. And I thought it's very simple, and many organizations, in fact, accepted it. And later, in international definition, IRA definition, in fact, these three principles are included through different examples. But still, for many Jews, it is very difficult to accept that criticism of Israel can turn into very primitive anti-Semitism. And almost every day we hear another invention like that Israeli army is sending its troops to help simply to crop the organs of people in Haiti or in some other place and then to sell these organs. Or that Israel is behind Corona, Israel making money on Corona. Every day we can see another thing which is absolute, total demonization. Or, for example, in America, this so-called deadly encounter, which can be heard on many campuses today, that Israeli police is teaching, Israel army is teaching American police how to treat black people in America. And that's something that it's like all these demonization things about blood libel, for example. It doesn't need any proof. Nobody is going to give any proof because the moment you start analyzing it, you understand it's nonsense. But it's deliberately connected to something bewildering, something awful, and it is said thanks to internet. Now, I'm sure that today more hundreds of millions of people believe in it than those who don't believe in it. And so these are the typical examples of demonization of Israel, which is anti-Semitism.
So what do we do about it? Because when you were imprisoned for being a Jew, it was clear, or at least it seems to me, maybe very oversimplified, to bring down the Iron Curtain and to stop this oppressive regime and to free the Jew. But this is more subtle, it's more nuanced, and it's also advanced in the name of liberalism, right? Because on college campuses in particular, it's part of a liberal progressive agenda. It's part of a human rights agenda that Israel is, in fact, as you just have said, the demon, and we have to stand up for the victim, for the oppressed. It's backwards, but they're successful in their campaign. So how do we offset it? What do we do about it? I know you're the chair now of this board of advisors of the institute. What do we do?
The struggle for Soviet Jewry was so successful because the aim was the definition of the enemy, who's the enemy, was so clear: Soviet totalitarian regime and Iron Curtain. And the aim was very simple: how we make a hole in this Iron Curtain, and it could be measured how many Jews are permitted to leave. And practically, except from some really extreme fundamental communists and extreme anti-Zionist groups in Jewish world, all the other groups, 99% of Jewish world, could agree with this, could accept it, understood that we are speaking about our brothers, about part of our family. Now, in this case, the challenge is much bigger. First of all, anti-Semitism is not so easy to explain as Iron Curtain. And what is our aim? There was aim very simple: to get Jews out. Here, our aim was that there will not exist any anti-Semite. We know from history it doesn't happen. So our aim has to be that anti-Semitism will not endanger our lives and the lives of our people. And then the base of our success is consensus among our people, that we agree what is the aim of our struggle. And when, even on the level of definition, it is very difficult for us to agree that using of the ban of human rights by our opponents doesn't make them human rights activists. That this new demonization of Israel is the same old anti-Semitism which is masking behind the human rights. Well, our enemy are a little bit more sophisticated, but we are sophisticated, clever people. First of all, we have to make sure that what I explain always to our shlichim, our messages of Jewish agency on the campuses. Our aim is not to convince anti-Semites that we are not bad people. Our aim is, first of all, to educate Jews that they don't have any reason to be ashamed of their connection with their people and with the state. As to ISGAP, I think our institute is filling a very important gap. If you look what's happened in the academia in the last 20 years, there is a lot of anti-Zionist, in fact, anti-Semitic even courses about how to explain Israeli-Palestinian conflict through the spectacles of anti-colonialism or anti-apartheid. And in every university, you can find professors who are explaining why Israel is doing today to Palestinians what Nazis did to Jews. There are the whole courses about it. But there was almost practically no systematic course on anti-Semitism, which really explains connection between anti-Semitism on the left and anti-Semitism on the right, and anti-Semitism of extreme Islamists, which are all on the right, and they're all deeply connected. So to build such a systematic course and to have two professors to teach this course, that's the aim of our institute. That's why we have these Oxford seminars every year when professors from different universities from the world are coming, listening to the lectures from the best specialists in the world, and then building their own courses about the history of anti-Semitism, the history of this hatred toward Jews, and not only history, how it is presented today. And only when you understand who is your enemy, then you can really successfully fight it.
So, and people can find out more about the Institute by going to isgap.org, the Institute for Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. They're doing remarkable work, and it's worth supporting and learning more about it. I know when you were a refusenik, and again, the extraordinary story that continues to inspire all of us today, and it's an honor to be with such a hero, the role of faith in your perseverance. You had to overcome incredible oppression, persecution, mistreatment, and so on, abuse. And the role of faith, the role of understanding what you were personally going through and what the movement as a whole represented in the scope of not only Jewish history, but Jewish philosophy, Jewish theology, a relationship with God, God's role in it. Do you see similarly, maybe if you could talk about that, the role of faith in perseverance and resilience, but even now, as many are willing to give up because anti-Semitism feels like a lost cause, are we ever going to have a safe space on campuses again for a Jew to participate freely, or are they going to be hostile environments? Or in general, do Jews not belong anywhere other than Israel? Is it a lost cause? What's the role of faith? What's the role of a relationship with Hashem, with God, in our finding the resilience to keep fighting and with no shame and with no apology, with no defensiveness? Where's the role of faith in that from your own story and what we need to know today?
Okay, from our own experience, I mean, experience of the activists of the struggle for Soviet Jewry. I was born in Donetsk, which today is, of course, the center of this awful, barbaric war of Russia against Ukraine. But at that moment, when I grew there, nobody could even think for a moment that there'll be sometime war between Russia and Ukraine. There was a lot of nationalities there, and it really didn't matter because there was no national life practical for anybody. But but in the idea of your parents is written the nationality, and whether it is written Russian or Ukrainian or Kazakh or Armenian or Georgian doesn't matter. But if it is written Jew, then there is a problem because then all the conversations at home are what Jews what kind of career you can do and what you cannot do, which doors are closed for you, and uh, what to do with your Judaism. Because there was nothing positive in this word Jew. There was no culture, there was no religion, no tradition, no language, nothing, no community. There was no Brit Milah and no Bar Mitzvah. It didn't exist in our lives. The Soviet Union succeeded really to assimilate us fully. But the only Jewish thing was anti-Semitism in the street and the official anti-Semitism. And what is the medicine from this disease that you were born with, this disease called Jew? The medicine is your parents explained you must be the best in your class in physics or mathematics or chess or music, doesn't matter in what, but that is the way of Jewish survival. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to do your best in making sure that you'll enter the best university in spite of anti-Semitism. And that is the victory of us Jews, that they try to keep us second-sorted citizens, and we succeed through our professional whatever success. To think that maybe we should fight against this injustice, against this lack of freedom, and we knew that we all live under dictatorship. You're not even thinking about it because there are no values in your life except from the value of survival, career. And then it changed after the 6-day war, when Israel entered our life in a very powerful way. The Soviet Union, the most powerful dictatorship in the world, was humiliated because it sent all its weapons and money and specialists to Egypt and Syria and said them, that is your moment to destroy Israel. And the opposite happened. And suddenly you see that everybody around you looks on you and says, how you Jews did it. And you understand for all these people around you, those who like you and those who hate you, for all of them, you're part of Israel. And when Israel is having this victory, they look at you as the one who made it. And so you want to understand this almost mystical connection with the country that you know so little. And that's when we started in the underground, from the books which were brought by mainly American Jewish tourists. We started reading about ourselves, about our history. And when you recognize that with some change of your mind, your history will be not the one which starts from Bolshevik Revolution, but from Exodus from Egypt. That if you want all this unbelievable history of Exodus from Egypt and the Maccabim and King David and to our days, to the creation of the state of Israel, it can be your history. And when you realize that all these people who are coming as tourists from Miami and from New York and from Philadelphia, from Toronto, from Sydney, they say, oh, your father is from Odessa and my father is from Odessa. You have family, we want to help you. You understand that all these people can be your family if you'll decide it. And then you recognize there is the state of Israel, which is ready to send airplanes to the end of the world, but to make you free. That's when you discover that is your identity, which you want to be part of it. Your history, your people, your state. That's what gives you real strength to fight already not for your career, but for your right to be Jew, for your right to go to Israel, for your right to be a free person, for the right of the others to be a free person. That's what gave me strength to be activist and a spokesman of Jewish movement and human rights movement in the Soviet Union. And I got to say that I think faith was present there, but faith as a religion came to me only on the latest. First, it was this political Zionism, then the pride for your history, desire to belong to a people. Then, if you want to discover this great culture, this great philosophy, of this great world, and then the faith, the God. The God comes at the end. In prison, it was such a great place to talk to God when it so happened that a few days before my arrest, I got a small psalm book through American tourists with a note from my wife, who was already in Israel, that she feels the time has come to send her psalm book to me. And I didn't understand. I opened it. I couldn't really read there with my Hebrew, which was all about demonstrations and struggle, the dictatorship and so on, and prison, treason. And the language of Psalms, I didn't know it, and I didn't have time even to think about it with all the demonstrations, with all the work, with all the struggle. And then a few days after this, I am arrested, and I remember the note of my wife, and start fighting to get this book back. And it took me 3 years before they got it to me back, together with the telegram that my father passed away. And then I decided I will read until I understand. And I was reading, and so happened that the first phrase, which I understood fully in this ocean of words, which if you don't learn, you don't even understand where is the end and the beginning of the sentence. You were not taught how to understand it. So I, as a mathematician, have to analyze all the places of the words that I know. Suddenly, the first phrase which I understand from these hundreds of thousands of words is Gam ki elech bagei tzal mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. And when you go through the valley of death, fear no evil because thou art with you. Who is the thou? It can be God, it can be King David, it can be your wife, it can be the state of Israel, it can be people of Israel. All of them together came to me to prison, because it cannot be accidental that this powerful phrase is the first one which I get from Psalm book. It's like the message which you're getting from God. That's when I really started regularly talk to God. It's a very great place, by the way. Prison, direct connection. You don't need rabbi. You don't need all the discussions. What kind of Orthodox dialogue you're having with God? You're connected to everybody there. And what to say? That the faith is, but faith for me was never simply Taryag mitzvot. Of course, it's good, but in prison, you're saying no to KGB, but this you made already all your Taryag mitzvot. But the faith is feeling of belonging to some huge historic process of marching through history, and feeling how you belong to people who are really creating different reality. What is human rights? It's all started from B'Tselem Elokim, the image of God created the man, and you go to the basics of the principles of human rights, and you see how Jewish history is really bringing the world there. And so this powerful feeling of belonging helps you to overcome all the problems, all the difficulties. And that's what I'm saying all the time to the young people, young Jews on the campus, everywhere, who are saying that, well, my Jewishness is in this, that I want tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, if you don't want tikkun olam, probably you're not Jew, because every Jew wants to see the better world and how he or she personally is contributing to the better world. And that's what I'm saying all the time, to make the world better, you need a lot of energy. It's a very difficult task. And you need the source of this energy. And from my experience, I can say the only source of this strength is your own identity. And we are so lucky that we have such a powerful identity. We can get so much strength from it. So you want to make the world a better place? Stick to your identity. And of course, this faith, this belief in this power of this Jewish way of life and Jewish march through history, that's what gives us strength. So if somebody feels that it's so uncomfortable to be Jew, I can only say it's so, your life will become so shallow and so non-interesting and so not inspiring and so decadent when you're giving up your identity. And what to do today to have your strong Jewish identity without feeling of connection to Israel is practically impossible. Israel is a very important part of Jewish identity today.
The challenge is that identity is under assault. The whole notion of what is identity in our time is there's identity politics. Identity no longer means anything. The basic definitions of identity, those lines are blurred. And I know we're not going to go there in this conversation, but people can choose their identity, whatever they want it to be, from gender to other things. And so many young Jews are growing up in America where there isn't a strong sense of an identity and of why it matters. And in fact, identity is almost a liability instead of an asset, because identity, you're narrowing yourself in too much. Why do you see yourself in such a small way? you're part of the whole human race and humanistic and caring about people. And you can feel like this identity today and that identity tomorrow, and you get to choose your identity. So the whole notion of the strength of identity and the power of identity is under assault. And maybe because we have it too easy, maybe because it's so simple, right? In your case, that identity was forged because you were deprived of it. So after the 6-Day War, when you made contact with it, and then further with Kiatai Madi, all the components of identity, you were being denied and deprived and imprisoned. So you craved that identity. Today, anyone could be and have whatever identity they want, so they're nothing. And to remind people who they are and what they should be, it's an uphill battle. It's a big task. It's hard to do in a world that identity is filled with identity politics and identity is under assault and intersectionality of identity, of multiple identities. So who is and what is that identity? It's people are very confused. How do we even start that conversation with these young people?
What was very confusing sometimes for the people in the free world about Soviet Union, that Soviet Union was using the same words they're using, but it had very different meaning. Soviet Union was saying, look, you have your own political human rights, and we have economical human rights, but you have your own problems with the lack of economical equality, and we maybe have some problems with political equality. So, but look, you have lawyers and we have lawyers. You have advocates, judges, and we have courts. So let's discuss how we improve the system. And people sometimes were falling in this trap, not realizing that the court in the Soviet Union and the trial in the Soviet Union means something very different than the same words in the West. So, unfortunately, today, the words like human rights are used in meanings absolutely opposite to what it was 30 years ago. And people keep thinking in the same terms, if they're speaking under the ban of anti-colonialism or human rights, then probably they're good. Take the word identity. It's used in absolutely different meanings. One of the meanings is that identity can be changed every moment. You can move from sex to sex. You can move from one national identity to the other national identity. Doesn't matter. Every minute you can choose for yourself identity which you feel yourself good about it. Then it really has no meaning. It's almost like news. Today's title in the newspaper. Tomorrow there will be another news. Tomorrow will be different identity. It loses any meaning. The other opposite usage of the word identity is that identity is like the capsule that you were born in, and that's it. You are a white person, then you're oppressor. You're a black person, then you're oppressed. And then you have to, before you start even talking to us, you have to get rid of put your white privileges before you enter the room. That's the slogan in many campuses. So you cannot really decide, say whether you're oppressed or oppressor, whether you're for this or for that. What are your beliefs in human rights? Because you were born in this identity, and that already defines where your position in this world. That's another extreme. That's something which is imposed on you, and you cannot choose. Or you can use any moment. When we are talking about identity, we are speaking about very personal feeling of belonging, that there are things which are more important for you than your own survival. You're belonging to the group of people of the same history, of the same faith, who are very proud of their mutual past and who want, with the ways of this past, build mutual future for the better of all the world. And that's something very different. And I have to say that those people who have such a strong feeling of identity, you can always rely on them, even if it is a different identity. In prison, one of my criteria is whether you can rely on a person that he or she is not KGB informer, and you never know who is KGB informer and who is not. But the people with a strong identity, who believe in freedom for everybody, but who have strong identity, there was much less chance that they will be informed of KGB, because exactly like for you as a proud Jew, there are things more important than your own physical survival. For this Pentecostal who was fighting for his right to teach his children to his religion, and for this he was put in prison again and again and again, he would not compromise with KGB, because for him, his moral world is much more to live in accordance with his moral principles more important than to get some more additional food from KGB. And it was true about nationalists, Ukrainian nationalists and Lithuanian nationalists and Muslim nationalists, Crimea Tatars, that we were fighting together against Soviet dictatorship. So there you see how identity, which is giving you some deep moral principles from the past, and you want to continue them in the future, that's the greatest power for having meaningful life, and not a decadent, not a superficial, not the one that you are given up to can be pushed by any pressure and any fear. So yeah, identity is as something that you choose, that you belong, that it has roots in the past. It unites you with big group of people to community to which you want to belong. That is the base of really moral and interesting life. And we should not permit to give up to those who are making inflation from this world, when it really means nothing. It can be changed like your gloves every day, or to make it something like a prison, which is put on you, and you cannot do anything to improve your life.
What advice would you give to somebody who wants to be an activist, who's passionate about fighting for these values and the identity, whether it's for the Jewish people and the Jewish future and against anti-Semitism or against anti-Zionists, or whether it's another component of human rights or social justice? I still vividly remember as a child my attendance at Soviet Jewry rallies, and that was really incredibly formative in my young child experience, that there was something worth fighting for, that we gave up Sundays, that again, it was a very small thing to give up. I don't mean to suggest more than that, but it meant that as a child that there was something worth fighting for and worth caring about, worth standing up to. And today it seems like people are very focused on themselves and their personal pleasure, their happiness, their sense of self. What advice would you give the person who does want to be an activist, who does want to fight anti-Semitism, who's not on college campuses? The Institute is doing wonderful work, and people should, again, isgap.org, find out more about what it's doing. But just a person who's married, who has a family, who's a balabas, who's part of a community, who says, I need to get involved in this fight. I've got to stand up. Unlike Soviet Jewry, there aren't rallies against anti-Semitism, and there aren't letter writing campaigns, and there aren't politicians that were lobbying. So what is the work for the person who wants to stand up to anti-Semitism to do today?
Well, because anti-Semitism is on the rise, and it enters practically every aspect of life, not only on the campus. You can see the rise of anti-Semitism on the left and anti-Israeli campaigns practically everywhere, and the prejudices in the media, on the internet, and so on one. On the other hand, the rise of anti-Semitism on the right, the physical attacks of Jews on synagogues becomes almost daily life. And where in America, look at all the organizations who are registering the number of hate incidents against Jews. They are making like 45% of all the hate incidents in America are those against Jews. So you don't have to go too far or in history or too far from your home to find the anti-Semitism. What is really important to understand, to feel how it endangers the life of America. Forget about Jews, but that's really the fact that America becomes more decadent, less feeling the danger of becoming society of hate. On the other hand, when people are in the name of political correctness are afraid to speak openly their minds, that's something very dangerous for for the life of American society and for personal life of people. First of all, don't be afraid to express your views. The fact that so many Jews prefer not to say publicly what they think, I heard it many times from people in Harvard or in some very respectable institutions who are saying that we want to express our solidarity with Israel, but we know that that will be damaging for our career. So we decided to be quiet. You're not in Soviet Union. Your life is not in danger. But to enjoy the life of the free person, you have to speak your mind freely. So that's all begins from this. Don't only speak truth to power, that's what we have to. Speak truth to yourself, speak truth to your families, speak truth to your colleagues at your workshop. That's first thing. Second, yes, it is very important not to let you to be to permit people around you to use the words like human rights for something opposite to this. Don't be afraid to learn to know what really the word human rights means. And yes, of course, you have to, every Jew have to defend more liberal world, the world of human rights, where everybody can enjoy freedom. So don't support dictators. Demand from your senators, congressmen, from your newspapers, why you're supporting dictators, why you're supporting those who are against the real freedom. And so you'll find out that there are thousands of ways to defend your people, your country, and American freedoms, simply by insisting that you yourself, become a free person. You say publicly what you really believe in. You are not afraid that potential danger to your career will turn into double thinker. I lived the life of double thinker, loyal Soviet citizen. I know how bad, how non-inspiring, how shallow, how frightening this life is. Don't permit anybody to take you back to this double think life when you are speaking one thing in your family and you are afraid to speak about it publicly. And of course, Israel, criticize Israel as much as you want. Today, at this moment, we have hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. Israelis, proud Israelis, who are criticizing Israel with the Israeli banner in their hands. So criticize Israel with Israeli banner, being proud of the fact that we have our country, which is the only nation which has, after 2,000 years, created back their own state and is coming back home. Feel some pride of it, and then criticize Israeli government or Israel specific decision as much as you want. The moment you feel pride for your people, pride for your history, pride for the fact that we have our own country, the only democratic country in the Middle East, that's enough to start. And then it will take you to some better places.
Are you concerned when you contrast what's going on in France right now with Israel? It's really extraordinary because as much as there are different opinions in Israel on judicial reform and other issues, but they are peaceful demonstrations and people feel very strongly, vociferously, but it's not dividing, please God, it's not dividing a people, as opposed to what we're seeing in France and the violence in the streets. And yet these strong difference of opinions on judicial reform and other issues in Israel are impacting in the diaspora so many of the Jews who don't have the strong Jewish identity. Outside the Orthodox community and outside those who have a very strong, powerful identity, as you've been describing, as a Jew and towards Israel, some of this divide is alienating. And they're jumping on the bandwagon of saying about Israel, well, if this is what they want to do, judicial reform, they're not nuanced, they're not sophisticated, they're not getting in the weeds to understand these reforms. And so they're just reading the headlines that see it turning into a religious state or dictatorship and so on. Religious coercion, and they're fearful. So some of the debate, which in Israel is healthy, but seems to be alienating much of diaspora Jewry who are not as familiar or don't begin with as strong a Jewish identity. Are you concerned about that? What do you think can be done about that?
Okay. First of all, France is a good example because it reminds us just in the middle of our demonstrations and our polarization and our bitterness of groups of Israelis between themselves, And as you said, some Jews in diaspora say, oi vey, what an awful thing is happening in Israel. Here comes France with these demonstrations. And where is the difference? In our demonstrations on both sides, and it can be one child from the family goes on this demonstration, another goes on that. Both these demonstrations are with Israeli flags. It's not a joke. And all the families where part of the family is coming from one demonstration, brings the flag of Israel home. The other part of the family takes this flag and goes the opposite demonstration. So all these demonstrations are where people love their country, are concerned about their country, and fighting in a democratic way how to make it better. That's the real democracy. In France, we have today a lot of hate demonstrations, the way people hate France. They hate its democratic structure. They hate its culture and history. And that's a very different type of problems. And I can only wish to France to overcome these problems, because it's really important for us that Europe will be free and democratic. But as to Israel, it's different type of thing. But yes, as an Israeli and Jew, I am concerned. I am concerned with the fact that we don't have enough dialogue. I keep saying that on both sides there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. I cannot accept 100% one side and 100% that side. But it is very important that we'll continue talking. When I participated in a number of meetings where there are people who are organizing demonstrations on both sides are talking to one another. And once there was a dialogue planned for 1 hour, and it continued to 12 o'clock at night, and people didn't want to leave. Why? Because during such meetings, they discover that they don't have monopoly on pain. The other side only feels pain. And they don't have monopoly on fear. They're afraid of the other side, and the other side is afraid of them. And it's very important that we keep this dialogue in the family. And the fact that so many not so connected to Israel Jews, instead of saying, oh, that is democracy in action, we want to learn from it, we want to add our voice to this. They're saying, well, if that is Israel, I don't want to be part of it. Well, it means, yeah, well, you know what? Many of you were upset with Trump. Did you say that we don't want to be part of America? Or some others were very upset with Obama. Did you say that you don't want to be part of America? Why such a different attitude to your own people? Yeah, well, I am concerned by the fact that we don't have enough dialogue in this moment, that unfortunately for a few years, all our dozen of parties turned into two parties, only Bibi or only not Bibi. And this black and white approach doesn't suit Israel, doesn't suit Jewish people, because we are very sophisticated people. And if you are sophisticated people, so please make an effort and understand what is this juridical reform is about, why majority of people wanted that it will be brought, why majority of people resist to the attempt to impose it altogether immediately without deep discussion. And the moment you'll try to be more sophisticated, you'll have your own opinion, and the most important thing you'll understand, it's not between enemies and friends. It's the important struggle inside the family of the people who don't have manual books, because there was not experience how to build country after 2,000 years of exile, when are coming people from 100 different communities, when the word Jew means different things for them, not speaking about all the other things. And it is very difficult to build Jewish democratic state. But be part of it. Don't be from outside.
Don't be an outsider. I'm so grateful for this time. I'm so honored. Just a couple more questions, if it's okay. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, the whole world had its attention entirely focused on it. The poor victims, the innocent people who were affected. The Jewish community rallied and raised millions and millions of dollars and tried to rescue those who were looking for refuge. And it seems as time has gone on and on and on, it's just gone to the back burner. And even though the war rages, and even though innocent people continue to be impacted, we don't talk about it. It came up again now with the failed coup, so it came back on everybody's radar again. But for the most part, it seems to have fallen to the back burner. What does it mean for you, this war, and what should people be more aware of? Is there something that we should be doing or advocating or fighting for in this battle? I know there are people emotional. While Russia's the aggressor, there are people whose family were victim to the Ukrainians in the Holocaust who say, you know what? We don't need to get involved. The two evil states, let them take care of each other. What do you think is a perspective that we should have on this war that continues to rage, that should have more of our attention?
Well, we have to understand that is the war about the future of the free world. The free world made very big attempts after the Second World War to put some basic principles, which will mean that even if you're weaker than your neighbor, you should not live in fear, because your neighbor will not be able to violate the border, to change the border, to conquer you. And there was the whole set of institutions that became from United Nations and NATO and the others were built. And the number of agreements and Declaration of Human Rights and Helsinki Agreement, many others, and a lot of efforts and a lot of money were pushed and in order to have secure free world, that people can enjoy their freedom, not being afraid that another dictator will come and will enslave you. In fact, Putin now challenged these principles. He decided that his mission is to rebuild Russian Empire. I met with Putin a number of times in the very first years of his presidency, when he was looking for recognition of the world. And then he decided he doesn't need recognition because he is forever and all these politicians are coming and leaving. And he has a historic mission. His mission is to rebuild Russian Empire and to change type of relations of the world. That if you're strong, people should be fear of you. And if your neighbors are weaker, you can conquer them. And that's why if he will continue doing what he's doing and will have even some success, as it was with Crimea, he will not stop. That's why I think it's very important that in spite of the initial fear of his threats, America and Europe overcame this fear and are fighting together. And we can be only glad that the first line of this resistance, Ukraine, is ready to fight and ask us only for weapons. Now, as to history, of course, we Jews have a terrible history with Ukraine, a terrible history with Russia, a terrible history with Spain, a terrible history with Crusaders in France, and in many other countries. As I said once, if we want to build our relations with the people on the base of what was our history with them, we should better move to the other planet, because there is no people with whom who are ancient enough, not like Americans, who are ancient, that we don't have some absolutely terrible history. And as the Bible teaches, I will not go now into the details, we have to judge people for what they are now. And now it so happens that Ukraine has the lowest level of anti-Semitism in Europe. There are many different criteria, I will not go into it. Neo-Nazis who are in Ukraine are less than in any other European country. They tried the election, they didn't get 1%, they didn't get 1/10% of the vote. That is the only country that I know in the free world where in the absolutely free and very competitive elections, the Jew who is not making secret of his Jewishness, who is speaking all the time, long before he was elected, was speaking all the time about importance of his Jewishness. He speaks about all the time that we Ukraine have to learn from Israel. He was speaking about it 10 years ago also, how to live among the enemies and to defend your country. And he was elected as a president. And if elections are today, 98% of Ukrainians will vote for him. And most important, that Ukraine at this moment, it so happened by the will of history and Putin himself, who said that Ukrainians are not a nation. And he put Ukraine in the center of history. And they became the first defenders of the free world. So, of course, at this moment, we have to see Ukraine as our allies. As to Jewish communities in Ukraine are in trouble because they are destroyed as many other communities in Ukraine. And, of course, we have to be with them and to help in all possible ways. But Jews in Russia are even in more trouble, and it's not accidental that Aliyah from Russia is today 5 times bigger than Aliyah from Ukraine, because they are afraid that they will be left behind the Iron Curtain. Not because of antisemitism. At this moment, there is no official antisemitism in Russia. Exactly, there is no antisemitism in Ukraine. Why Russian Jews are flying away from Russia? Because they are afraid that all their rights of free people were taken in the last year or 2 years, and the Iron Curtain is coming back, and they're afraid to be behind it. Shall we help them? Of course we shall help.
So one last question. Again, thank you so much for this time. You've written much, and much has been written about you, and those students of your life know how extraordinary it was. Is there a particular part of your life that you think is underappreciated? Is there part of your own story, whether behind the Iron Curtain or all the leadership that you've shown in Israel, that you wish more people knew about or appreciated or celebrated? Is there a piece of your journey that, please God, still has many chapters yet to be written that you think is not appreciated as much as you wish it were?
No, well, as to my personal life, I don't think there can be any complaints of not appreciating something. To the contrary, I think very often we, Avitali, want to have much less public and more modest life than we have to live. But as to the struggles, I do think that it was a big failure, I would say, of all of us and of educators, of rabbis, of parents, that the lesson of the struggle for Soviet Jewry is absolutely forgotten. Not because of us, I cannot complain on the lack of the attention, but because that was the most unbelievable and powerful victory of the Jewish people in modern times. Maybe the biggest thing which happened to Jews after creation of the State of Israel, and it happened only because we Jews as people, American Jews and Russian Jews and Israelis and European Jews, we all were fighting as one family. And the result was unbelievable. The biggest dictatorship of the world, all the communist system fell down as a result of the fact that small group of Jews in Soviet Union discovered their identity, and American Jews rediscovered their identities through the struggle. So it's such a powerful story, and we have such a headache how to make young generation of Jews be proud of their own people. And we try to go back into the stories about Maccabees and King David, and they say, ask these parents, why didn't you tell to your own children how you went to demonstrations, how you went to Russia to meet refuseniks, and how you made all this possible? And that is, I think, the biggest failure. Not about that these people didn't tell about me. Who cares? I have enough. They didn't tell about themselves, about their own struggle to their own children. And as a result, new generation of Jews doesn't know about the most important victory of modern times, its defeat of communism, and the unique role which Jewish people played in this struggle. Their own parents, their own grandparents made it possible, but didn't tell it to their children.
That's a great message for people to be able to give an example and inspire the future. I can't thank you enough for your time, for going behind the Bima. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your work with the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. I want to encourage everyone to find out more and support their work, isgap.org. Thank you so much for this time. It really was incredibly not only informative, but very, very inspiring, and left us with marching orders, how to try to combat anti-Semitism on campus and in our lives, how to tell that story and the example, the precedent of having fought before, and please God to have a future where we don't need to fight again and again.
Thank you.
Rabbi Brody, we've had the privilege now, Yosef Mendelovich, Natan Sharansky. These people are heroes. You know, people have posters hanging, or they follow online someone, celebrities, athletes. These are heroes. What they mean for the Jewish people and Jewish history. What did you take away from that conversation?
First of all, when he got that Tehillim, Gam ki elech begetz amavis, I mean, there's nothing else to say.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
the role of faith, the role of Tehillim. I love the last point that he made about what's underappreciated is not him or his story, but our story of when the Jewish people put our mind to it. Look how the American Jewry and others, we brought down the Iron Curtain. So
It's
if we put
amazing.
our mind to stopping anti-Semitism, standing up for Israel, right? That's his disappointment, is that we don't talk enough about what we did. Did you go to Soviet Jewry rallies when you were a kid, when you were young? You remember? You were still maybe in South Africa.
Yeah, I was in South Africa. I moved in '85, so it was like right
Yeah.
around the same time. But Elizabeth, we weren't really doing that. I don't think.
Well, it's right. There was a big debate. Rabbi Teitz, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Moshe. There's a big debate. What the right? Rabbi Teitz, Elizabeth was very involved in going behind the Iron Curtain and sending people with all kinds of
Correct.
things.
Get his way.
Get his way. There was a big debate. Are we going to make things worse? Will we make it better? How do we deal
I
with it?
remember hearing about it.
Yeah. But it was a big part. When we were young, there was something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
We rallied. We cared.
Rabbi
We
Brand,
gotta-
he got arrested. Remember?
We got to tell that story, is his point, which I think is a really great point to make as well. In the meantime, Rabbi Bernie, enjoy the Holy Land. We'll let you get some sleep.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward. Next week, very exciting. Next week,
Can't wait. It's gonna be a big episode next week.
big episode.
I might be sponsoring. Maybe I'll sponsor it.
Behind the Bima doesn't take a break. A lot of other things are taking a break for the summer, but you can't take a break from being inspired and being excited.
No
So
way.
without, we miss you. We're looking forward to your
Miss you
return, or
too.
to our joining you there. But until then, we say to everyone, stay healthy.